What matters are the fears and thoughts we usually keep hidden. Disordinati is where people strip back the layers. Welcome everyone to this episode of the Disordinati. I'm here with Robin today. Hello, Robin.
Hi.
Robin is a fantastic yoga teacher and is also my yoga teacher. And I thought it would be wonderful if he could share with us his experience of all these years teaching yoga and making people feel better. So let's start from the early days, since you've practiced yoga for so many years. What was yoga like when you first discovered it, and how did the practice look different from how we practice it today?
The last part of the question, I can say not a big difference, just fine-tuning. But you asked me how yoga was at the time. When I first did my teacher's training, it was one of the first of the British Wheel of Yoga teacher's training courses. So that goes back a long way, best part of 45 years, or more, even more, nearly 50 years.
Oh my God.
Between 45 and 50 years that I did that teacher's training course. They still are there are many, many very fine schools of yoga now, and we're still one of the leading ones.
What drove you to this decision of wanting to become a yoga teacher?
Somebody really just put a book into my hands, which was quite an inspiring book. There was something about logic. I remember one particular sentence which stuck in my mind, which said that the mind and the body are the instruments through which we live. So let them be finely tuned and well looked after. And that logic of that struck me as very, very obvious and very profound. And so I started practicing from the book. I can't remember how I came to enlist for teacher's training, but it was available then through the LEA, London Education Authority, evening classes. So it was a very minimal charge. It was run by a lady called Velta Wilson, who lived to be 102.
Wow.
Was teaching yoga right up into her late 90s. Quite a formidable lady. So that was quite a privilege, really. A yogi and poet.
That's a good combination.
Very good combination.
How has your relationship with yoga evolved? If you think about, physically, mentally, and spiritually, when you started, you were very young. Now you're in your
70s.
70s. 70s.
It would be nice to be able to say it's just gone on and on, developing and growing. It's not quite like that. Indeed, when I first started out, yoga philosophy came into the yoga teacher's training, and I read an awful lot, not just of yoga philosophy, but C.G. Jung and Freud and the Western psychoanalysis movement, Western psychotherapy. All of this interested me a lot. Gradually over the years, it's just down to learning how to deliver a good session for my people. And I still practice yoga regularly. But I wouldn't really now like to say that it's progressing and evolving in a great way. It's rather stabilized. Just like how I shower every day, I make sure to practice yoga every day.
That's amazing. It's like part of your daily routine, and it's just part of who you are.
Very much part of life, yes.
Yeah. And I was thinking at the beginning when I asked, how do you see yoga today? And obviously for you, because it's part of your identity and how you navigate life, probably it's a very personal journey. But I was also thinking about the emerging of, you have these online yoga packages, especially in the US, or you have these apps for yoga, or you have these, new, very fancy sort of yoga studios. And I've tried some of them, and it's very different from the yoga I practice with you, which is the one I enjoy the most. And I can see that there is a bit of a difference between what is now, fashionable and what is real yoga in a way.
there's a big difference between fashion and, well, I hesitate to say the real yoga because it's a huge philosophical question. What's the real yoga? But yoga that is to feed the mind and the body, free the body from tension. Yoga that is practiced for well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Can be quite different from the fashion yoga, which could be quite competitive. And of course, we well know it's a multi-billion-pound industry now, absolutely huge. And I just feel I'm gently in my yoga studio here in Oxford with a few very good friends, sharing a nice, fairly gentle form of yoga practice. And I hope finding a certain peace of mind through it all, as well as flexibility and the various physical benefits.
After I do the practice with you, I do feel much more relaxed and balanced as well, both mentally and physically. So it does have a big effect on my health. And I was wondering, over time, and especially if you think about the fact that yoga can be practiced at any age, how has yoga supported your sense of vitality and health? And are there practices that you consider essential for living well?
Well, it's been just a huge support to me. I see a cat in the background there. Yes, there's something I can never really quite put my foot on it, but there's something about yoga practice and one's sense of self that has been with me all my life, so that I don't feel I have anything to prove, or I just know there's this calm space one can enter, and it feels very familiar. Not sure it always felt familiar, but it certainly does now. And it just reinforces a sense of self. Difficult to explain that. The obvious benefits to health are much easier to describe and talk about and explain. Anyway, it's been a love all my life, and it's certainly a way of life rather than an activity.
Because you taught yoga for so many years, and you probably met very different people in all these years, and people from different ages and backgrounds and even nationalities like mine. Is there anything that your students have taught you about yoga in a way, or the practice itself, and that you wouldn't maybe have realized if you had practiced yoga by yourself?
Oh goodness, that's an interesting question. And one thing, if people get into any kind of muddle, you need to understand what you've said that didn't come across clearly. And so over the years, refining my practice and learning from people if they've actually misunderstood me or whatever, and misunderstood instructions, it's certainly been one way in which I've been taught. Many people in my classes have been practicing yoga for a very long time. There's something about their wisdom that comes across. So yes, I feel I've learnt a huge amount through. I don't quite like to call myself a yoga teacher. I prefer to say I lead yoga classes. Teacher seems to implicate someone who's got a huge knowledge which they're imparting. And I don't think my knowledge about yoga is any greater than a lot of people, indeed than people in the classes even. But leading a class is just a nice, well, for me anyway, good description of what I do.
And I wanted to call you at the beginning my Yogi, but knowing how you feel about the word teacher now, I'm sure that it's a reflection of how you practice yoga. And even for me, experiencing your classes, it's part of a sort of journey that we do together. And as you say, you lead us, and you're a guidance in that personal journey that each student is experiencing in that moment. Is there a particular teaching or philosophy that has guided you through difficult or meaningful moments in your life that is related to yoga?
I have to say that probably the person, this is years ago, that the teacher who possibly had most influence, you could really in a way call him a yoga teacher, although he wouldn't recognize that, is C.G. Jung. For a very long time I was interested in the dreaming and dream interpretation. Learned a lot about the workings of my inner psyche. And I think if I was to cite one influential yoga teacher who probably learned most from it would be Desikachar. whose method of yoga and breath and moving with the breath have become an absolutely key part of my practice. I have been to a retreat run by him, but I was introduced to him many, many years ago. And very sound. And his yoga particularly adapted for Western psychology. And one of the things you may have noticed in my classes is that I don't tend to use the Sanskrit words. I describe postures and everything that we do in English. I wouldn't describe myself as a mystic or anything like that. It's pretty common sense kind of practice, really, if you like.
I always find difficult to do the breathing and movements together, maybe because I'm still learning and doing multitasking in a way. But I was thinking, because you said that you don't like being too mystical, I imagine you have been to India, where a lot of people go for, finding themselves or, doing this sort of yoga retreats. How was your experience going to India and seeing how yoga is being done there?
I have to say that when I went to India, actually, I didn't go to an ashram. I was altogether too fascinated by the country and by everything that one saw in India to want to withdraw from that. I only had I'd been to India for a month and Nepal for a month. But, sometimes some of the stories I hear about the Indian yoga teachers, I think to myself, there's something about the way yoga has been developed and taught and put over in the West, which is safer. I'll never forget one teacher, actually, this was in England, but a visiting Indian teacher. And the supine twist where you open out your arms and knees go to one side, your head goes to the other side. I remember he came and pushed my knees down one side, held my shoulders down with his full weight. I've never, ever before or afterwards stretched so far in that posture. Fortunately, I didn't break, but I felt I was about to. Some of the teachers there do have a reputation of being quite gung-ho, actually, as well as, I have to say, of course, the yoga masters. It's all there. The nearest I've met to a yoga master is Felter Wilson, the person who took my teacher's training. Quite an extraordinary woman.
For some postures, you really need to be quite elastic.
Well, there's 240 postures, about main postures, of which I have about 50 maybe that we practice. I can't think. I couldn't. There's an awful lot of postures that I left out.
So many. Thinking about postures, how have you adapted your practice and also teaching as your body has changed over, this, how many years did you say? 40 years, 45 years of practicing yoga?
Well, something you have to come to terms with when you've turned 75, as I have, is that some of the things that you could do when you were 35 are no longer wise to do. Particularly, I'm thinking of the headstand. The risk of a small fracture in the vertebral in the neck would be could be disastrous, and just not worth it. I no longer have the strength in my arms to take the weight out of my head, so that I'd be scrunching those vertebrae together. So that's one that was advisable not for me to not continue to practice. There are other ones. There's still, mainly it's a question not that you suddenly find you can't do this posture or that posture, but you just don't go quite as far into the stretch. Well, balance is another issue. But, that has to do with my diagnosis of Parkinson's disease, which happened earlier. And I have noticed my balance deteriorating in the last couple of years. But I'm quite glad to have an explanation of that. So I think the main answer is that most of the things that I've always practiced, I still practice, with the exception of the headstand, but sometimes slightly modified version of the posture, sometimes just a question of not going in. I used to do a forward fold and just be able to wrap my hands around my feet. Now I just about reach my feet, but not so much. So we have to understand that you can't go on forever doing all the practices that you do when you were young.
Yeah.
But my practice is nonetheless for that at all. It's So just sometimes a question of accepting the inevitable.
And I feel like yoga does help also with knowing the limits of your body. But also for me, it was always question of I can't believe that I am able to put my body in this position, because we walk and we sit and these are the main movements that we do. But then through yoga, I learned that I can put my body in very strange positions, but it's sort of beautiful that you can do that with your body. It makes you feel alive in a way, and in charge of your body, of all the parts of our body. And I like that particularly when we do the body scanning. I'm aware of having fingers and toes and different parts of the body that I don't think about during the day.
That's a vital part, a really crucial part of certainly of yoga practice, is really learning to listen to your body. Just so remarkable to, all the time it's there, it's serving us on the whole, doing what we ask it to do, but it has a life of its own. And when you listen and you just feel the muscle tone and the general feeling tone in the different parts of the body, it has a lot to tell us.
In our class, we have also some older people, and I was thinking also of my grandparents, because when I visited them recently, I actually we watched your videos together, and I've practiced yoga with them, and I could see that sometimes they would feel discouraged if they weren't able to do certain movements. What do you tell older students who feel discouraged when they practice yoga?
The great thing is that most postures can be adapted. In fact, when I say most postures, there's always something. So if you can't do something, you can do something else. It's most common are knees. People who start yoga late in life often have already got deterioration in the knees, arthritis setting in, and that's particularly difficult because it can compromise standing and balancing. And you just have to learn what your restrictions. Very, very rarely have anybody who has to just wait something out. There's always something they can do which fits in the overall part of the sequence and can work for them. But you must never ever ask people to compromise their dignity. We were talking earlier about the beauty of yoga movements. And some very older people who might be quite inflexible coming to yoga late, nevertheless, as they start to move into postures, they quickly develop a kind of grace of movement, just sometimes not going as... and the main thing is that you only go a little way into stretches rather than a long way that some of the younger people can do. And of course, there's a great difference between a person who comes to yoga when they're 60 and somebody who comes to yoga when they're 20.
I mean, I feel less flexible than my sister already.
And your sister who
is 25, and I already feel like...
Well, yep. So the idea is that you do what's right for you, and you're not worrying about what other people can or can't do. Very important. It's very important to create that atmosphere in a yoga class. Crucial, I would say, so people feel safe. And however far or not far you go into a yoga posture, nearly all the postures have their beauty. The body makes beautiful shapes.
And I think you're amazing in making people feel safe, and that they don't have to force posture if they don't feel like it, but they can sort of dance around it and find maybe an adaptation of that same posture, and it will make them feel good about themselves. Looking back to all these years of yoga and the yoga you're doing now, what do you hope people remember or take away from your life's work in yoga?
Well, I hope, let's say, people who have to move on or will find another yoga class that they can join and enjoy as much as I hope they might have enjoyed mine. I hope that and know that some people take on yoga as a bit more of a way of life and develop their own practice and practice at home and keep it going. And so I hope people remember it as a time when they made friends. And the sad thing would be if they just remember that once they practiced yoga, but they don't do any more. That would, by contrast, be a shame.
Yeah, I mean, finding your yoga studio for me was really a blessing. And I don't know if you remember, I wasn't even in Oxford yet. But I made sure
Indeed, you're
to,
listening.
I
Mm.
made sure to book a spot in your class because I loved your website and I loved I could feel the sense of calmness and safety in your yoga studio. It just makes me laugh thinking about it that I wasn't even in Oxford yet, but I wanted to make sure that I had a spot in your class.
It was mainly based on the description of my classes in the website.
Yeah, and
It's
your face sort of reflected a sense of how I wanted to be taught yoga.
quite a lot of people who've been to my sessions but had to move on. Particularly, she was thinking about somebody, Cyprus. She was saying that whenever she comes to lie down in the relaxation posture, Shavasana, she always hears my voice. So without actually having a recording, it's become that voice and the guidelines for the relaxation have become ingrown rather than something imported from outside. You really feel something has gone in when somebody says something like that.
I'm lucky because I will have this recording that I can listen to anytime I want.
Very few classes were delivered online. The idea of live stream yoga classes never occurred to us. And then this game-changing lockdown, and suddenly, of course, audience like myself struggling to get used to the tech aspects. That's changed teaching a lot. You have to say that when you teach online, you're relying quite a lot on verbal instructions. You can't just glimpse at the person next to you, or it's much easier to sort of get with what's going on in a live class online. So it really made me think about the clarity of the instructions.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing a fantastic job in guiding people also online, and I think this is something that I will definitely take away from your classes is this certainty of being guided gently into moving my own body. And what I find beautiful in a way is thinking about the fact that we each have our own lives and we each have our own worries and maybe we have problems physically. But then in that moment when we're doing the practice, we're all together and we're moving our bodies together in a personal way, but we're doing it together in the same room. And I find that beautiful.
It is a lovely thing. Something, this is what you were saying about learning from my class members. You can imagine if you've been teaching for the best part of 45 years, sometimes not every class you go in feeling full of energy and feeling that great. Sometimes I'll be thinking, oh my goodness, would I be glad when this class is over? Never more than 5 minutes into the session, all that evaporates. It's partially just from the lovely people and, just before we've even begun to practice yoga, just saying hello to them makes a difference. Just as soon as we start to come into that shared yoga space, all that evaporates and, the lesson goes through. And so I have to be really feeling pretty ill if I'm to struggle if I'm not, but if I struggle through a lesson, I would have to be feeling pretty ill and really shouldn't be doing it at all. If I don't terribly feel like it, then when it starts, as I say, it's transformed and happens so quickly. A little bit of magic in that.
Absolutely. Robin, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation.
My great pleasure.
And I'll see you in the next class. Namaste.
Namaste to you.